wish, like later in my career, I wish that I had changed it. I think it would have just helped. In the moment, the reason I didn't was because I thought it was somehow disingenuous to change my name. But all the name ideas I had were so dumb that I'm happy I didn't. They were K Pickles, Kentucky Brown Horse.
Yeah, that would have.
But I thought of one.
I like that.
Like yesterday,
cool.
which I think would have been great, which is Burt Bridges.
Yes. Burt Bridges, you'd be huge. You would be Madison Square Garden.
Huge.
Yeah.
I just couldn't stand being called Burt, though. And Kurt Bridges just doesn't work so well.
No.
But Burt Bridges is a great name.
It's quick. It's incredible what a name can do. And I tell people that all the time. I around that era, pitched you a sincere pitch that I think you thought I was being mean. And I had pitched you Kurt Butt. B-U-T-T, because I'm like, nobody, if you went, who's on the show tonight at Rafifi? They go, oh, it was Eugene Merman, Kurt Butt. Like, I felt like it was one of those things.
That's such a good idea. Yeah.
But I think you thought I was teasing you, but I also think it's because you were so new to stand-up that you just wanted to get it right.
Yeah, that is that idea where it's like Kurt Butt is such a punk name. Like, that would be fucking great. You know what I mean? It reminds me of like Kurt Vile or something like that.
Exactly.
You know? Kurt Butt would have been great, but I wasn't. Even though I loved punk rock growing up and still do, when I started doing stand-up, I was just like, well, stand-up's not punk, so I'm not going to, I never applied the, punk ethos to my stand-up career, weirdly, until, recently. I think it was a missed opportunity. I just didn't, I tried to get things right, and there is no getting things right in comedy or in any creative endeavor. If you're trying to do something right, don't do it just the way you want to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
That would have been fucking great.
It's funny because I always look back and I felt bad at that moment because I really felt like you thought I was teasing you or something, and I wanted to be like, I really think people will remember that name. And
it fits with my name. Brown Oler is a butt, you know.
Yeah, and it's owning it. I've been going as a kid. People call me Scotty. Some people still call me Scott. My parents go either way. But by the time I got to New York and got to the point where people were introducing me, including you and Kristen and Shanali and that whole crew, everybody introduced me as Scotty, and it was great. So
were you Scotty growing up?
Some people,
oh, interesting.
Not to everybody, but enough where, when I played sports as a kid and stuff like that, a lot of my teammates would call me Scotty. It's a nickname, really, but now it's basically my real name. Yeah. But the moment I decided to stick with it and to introduce myself that way was I used to flip bikes. I think we talked about it on the podcast. I used to buy used bikes off of Craigslist, tune them up, take better pictures, and sell them for a little bit more money and flip them all around the city. Because a lot of people had a college bike and they moved to New York with the aspiration that they're going to ride all the time. And then you're like, I have a very small apartment. I wish this thing was out of here.
Yeah.
So there's this one bike that was $75, but I knew it was like a $600 bicycle. I knew it was a very nice bike, Upper West Side. So this was going to be a commitment coming from Brooklyn on the subway. So I email the young woman and I say, hey, I'll give you $100 and I'll come right now. I'll give it to you cash. Didn't hear anything for the rest of the day. The girlfriend I had at the time, we're hanging out, and I get the email back. It's like, yeah, come get it tonight. I'm home at 7. So we go up there, and when I'm doing the test ride on it, my girlfriend's standing there with this similarly aged woman, and she's like, you know why she's like, I got 500 Craigslist responses. And my girlfriend was like, really? And she goes, and I picked him because Scotty sounds like a nice name. It sounds like a nice person. I knew I wasn't going to be in danger giving it to a Scotty. And she's like, that's so weird. So I came back, and then she told me that on the train ride back with the bike that I had bought. And it stuck with me. It's there are certain names that imply danger, serial killerness. You don't hang out with Waynes. You don't hang out with Teds.
Yeah.
Seth, you got to be careful when you're around a Seth if there's sharp objects in the room. But she was like Scotty out of everybody. I just saw he signed at that, and I was like, yeah, Scotty, sure, I'll sell to him. So I just felt like it was a choice to be friendly.
That's great. And so then you registered with the WGA as Scotty Landis.
Yeah, for Mega Drive, my first MTV show, and when it was on screen, it was Scotty, and the rest is cinematic history.
Here we go with this first one from Jessica L.
Sounds good to me.
This was sent recently. Hey, Banana Boys, I have a few crazy stories about my grandfather I thought you'd enjoy. If this makes it to the podcast, feel free to cut any of it if it's too long.
Okay.
During World War II, my grandfather was an engineering student at Notre Dame, and after he graduated, he was shipped off to D.C. and was immediately put to work developing sonar for the U.S.
Wow.
He was the strongest swimmer in his team, so when the time came to test the sonar they were developing, they rowed my grandfather out into open water, threw him overboard, and then tried to find him from the shore. They did this multiple times, testing just how far away and reliably he could be detected. This, for some reason, prompted no follow-up questions when he was telling 8-year-old me. I guess I thought that was how jobs worked.
Oh, my God.
After D.C., my grandfather then worked for NASA. He helped design the propulsion engines to get rockets into space, and he was also a quality control checker. He was known to be extremely meticulous and a pain in the butt to the higher-ups who wanted the rockets to pass inspection as quickly as possible. His favorite story to tell was how he found a faulty part that cost $2.50, but if he hadn't caught and replaced it, it would have costed the unmanned rocket hundreds of millions of dollars to cause the hundreds of millions of dollars to blow up on the launch pad. His bosses surely appreciate his eye for detail that day.
Yeah.
And here's the kicker. My aunt and uncle all remember my grandfather getting into regular arguments with his father-in-law, my great-grandfather, who, after watching the moon landing, adamantly declared that it was a fake. No matter how much my grandfather insisted it was real. And you know what his job was. My great-grandfather never believed him. My grandfather may not be with us anymore, but the many satellites he helped launch into space are, the next time you use GPS on your phone, tip your hat to my grandfather and the many NASA engineers that made GPS possible. Bananas. Thank you, Jessica.
What an interesting family member. Wow.
I know. I love an interesting family. I have such a big family, but I really have one super interesting relative.
Yes.
And it's not by blood. It is by marriage. He's my uncle.
Okay.
Uncle Clyde.
Great name. Oh, great name.
He's such an interesting dude, too. He has I think he grew up in New Hampshire, but has an old school New England accent that no longer exists.
Like Brahmin, like a type of old weird,
like a sea shanty of a mouth. Do you know what I mean? Like it just sounds like he's rowing a boat the entire time he's talking to you in a stormy sea. And he was a marine biologist, and the reason that I wanted to be a marine biologist as a child, he was head. He's so fascinating. He was the head of the Smithsonian's squid department. So he spent his entire career chasing after giant squid.
Yes.
And so in the Smithsonian, if you've ever been there, they used to have a big exhibit of a dead giant squid.
I remember this so vividly because when you grow up where we grew up, we went to D.C. every single year for a field trip my entire life. And I remember in the Natural History Smithsonian, the giant squid. I remember that and it's disgusting. But go on. Sorry
it was all deflated and looking. And so he spent his entire life. That was his goal, to capture a giant squid alive, and not in a
fishing net,
take a photograph of it, or a video of it. So he's invented different technology to try and get giant squid on camera. One thing, and they did a whole National Geographic about this, is that they would put cameras, because they blue whales or sperm whales eat giant squid or fight them for some reason.
Sperm do, whales, They always have big suction. They always say dinner-sized plate suction cup marks.
Yeah. So they would literally put a camera into the blubber of them as they would dive. And so they got all this amazing footage, but no giant squid.
Wow.
And he went on, and his entire career was getting new funding and then going out to try and look for a giant squid for 2 weeks. And then he would fail. but he would learn some other stuff about some other, feeding habits of some other type of squid or something else. And that would, he'd write a paper about it, and then he would go and try and get more funding to try and find the giant squid. His entire career. And then he retires. And the year he retires,
here it comes.
A bunch of Japanese scientists get the giant squid on camera.
Oh, yeah.
And can you imagine that? It's literally like his white whale. Do you know what I mean? Like, he is Moby Dick. And it's the year that he retires that it is discovered. And of course, he was just super psyched.
Yes.
He's been thinking about this thing his entire fucking career.
Yes.
To finally see
cool.
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing, and I could see why Uncle Clyde would have been your favorite uncle, because that's you want your uncles to have those kind of jobs. That's like the best case scenario is you have those fun uncles that have seen it all and done it all. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. I do love in Jessica, I think it was her story.
Yeah.
I love that they would throw him overboard.
Yes.
And then the second story, she said that he was known as meticulous and a pain in the ass. And I'm like, I think those two things are connected. I don't think the strongest swimmer is the main detail. I think they're like, oh, I wonder who this should be. The guy that was like, actually, and you're like, toss his ass overboard.
That's so funny.
That's cool. And we all wanted to be marine biologists or aquarium dolphin trainers.
Yes.
We all did. Just a PSA to our bananimals. If you're one of those people who thinks they can do a really authentic dolphin sound, great, but don't ever do it again. It's really fun for the people who do it, but for all of us who have to listen to it, it's very depressing. So get together with friends, do dolphin sounds.
I agree 100%.
Thank you.
But for a different reason is that my daughter,
oh boy,
is recently, in this past, thank God, everything changes about children. But for a good month, 2 months, she was a baby dolphin every day. She would only talk to me in squeals and whistles.
It's not fun.
And the only way it would stop is if we adopted. We had to walk through these very specific steps where I had to refer to Lauren, my wife, as Molly, and I was Gil, and we would have to be like taking a walk and then discover this baby dolphin who would only talk to us in squeaks, and then we have to adopt the baby dolphin only using dolphin language. So I had to talk to her. And, negotiating an adoption is difficult in dolphin speak.
Oh, it must be. They're very smart.
I'm done with dolphin speak. Give me another one, Scotty.
You got it. Sorry to the dolphin sounders out there, but just do it on your own. Do it for you. The rest of us smile, but we die inside. Here we go. This one was sent to our DMs on the Bananas podcast on Instagram. You've heard of it. People use it. From Rebecca X. Johnson, who is a Brit, and she sent a very interesting story.
All righty.
I was working a night shift in our small law firm building. All of our day staff members had gone home, leaving just a handful of us around for the evening. Around 10 p.m., one of my colleagues from the day shift, who works in the office next door, let's call him John. You know it's going to be good when we have a pseudonym.
Yep.
We're going to call him John. Pops back in to the office to collect some things he had forgotten to take home with him earlier that day. I left him to it, and carried on with my work. About an hour has passed, and my other office buddy and I were walking down the corridor to make some coffee when we heard a loud humming noise coming from the pitch black office next door to ours. Concerned about the noise, we decided to go in and check if everything was okay. We entered the office and turned on the light, and to our horror/delight, there was John, a 63-year-old adult male, seated in the corner of the office with his pants off and his dick in the work vacuum cleaner. Oh, Kurt, can you imagine this? He had...
What?
Here, this adds a wrinkle. Get ready for a wrinkle. He had his phone out, and he was filming the act, which we later found out was a video treat for his wife.
What?
Yeah. Hold on, I gotta find the other version. There's one. There's two.
Wow, I'm so excited. Was the vacuum cleaner on? And what was the humming? Was he also humming?
The vacuum cleaner was on. He was
fucking vacuum cleaner. Sucking my dick good.
I don't know. But so he later found out. Yeah, so the vacuum cleaner was on, to answer your
so
question.
that may be the noise, that the humming they heard.
Yeah,
the vacuum
they heard the sound
he
of a
wasn't
vacuum
humming.
cleaner in what was supposed to be an empty office. Maybe he was also humming along. This man, John, has a personality. Yeah, he had his phone out filming the act, which we later found out was a video treat for his wife. He was politely asked to remove his penis from the vacuum, pull up his pants, and vacate the building immediately. Yes, I guess so. A few days later, we received an email from John reading, quote, "Dear all concerned." Oh boy, what a
I mean, that's a
bold-
lot of people at this point, John. All right.
Yes,
Now that once this podcast goes out, we are all concerned.
Yes. I have been feeling very stressed as of late under the current circumstances, but I did not go about solving the problem in a correct manner.
Is this recently? Is this during?
This was
the
2 weeks
pandemic?
ago. She sent us this 2 weeks ago.
This just happened.
This happened.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, start the new year off right. Self-help. Feel good. But I did not go about solving the problem in a correct manner. Please accept my apology. End of email. Sure, blame the pandemic for the urge to fuck a vacuum. This is the same man. Now, this is when, I love that story. That would have been a great end to the story, but Rebecca X. Johnson, a true bananimal, gave us a detail to share to just paint a little picture. We're all picturing John, 63, doing what he's got to do with the Dyson. This is the same man who came ziplining with all of us on a team building activity and got his balls tangled up in the harness so bad he ended up in a harness. Got the harness and ended up in the hospital with a twisted testicle that ended up the size of a bowling ball. I guess this life is not for everyone. Love the podcast, Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca.
Rebecca, that is amazing.
John, you scoundrel. You pervert.
You pervert, John. I mean, what's weird? It just is. It's about the thing. Like, there's so many questions, but
yes.
The fact that he was like, well, there's people here in the office.
Bad idea.
I'm still going to do it.
Illegal.
A. B, like you could buy that vacuum and bring it home. Like,
yes.
If this was your thing, have it at home.
Yes.
It's so great. And what is it for his wife?
Right, which I don't buy that detail, but maybe that is, I don't know, maybe there's an office fetish kink thing, maybe it's a humiliation thing, maybe there's something legitimate between this older couple, but it feels like that that feels like a deflection to me. That feels like he's trying to normalize something that's criminal. But this guy goes hard. He gets his nuts twisted ziplining. He's I guess they maybe fired him.
Connected? Do you know?
Yeah.
What if they're connected? That he somehow injured his dick, and the only way he gets off now is through the suction of a vacuum cleaner. Like, that's also like the crazy.
Yeah.
It's like a cartoon level of an idea of a sexual act. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, no one can actually believe that sure, there's the word suck in both of them, but vacuum definitely would not be pleasant. It wouldn't be fun.
No.
Awful.
And you're in public. You're at a workspace with other people. That's the thing that's so bad about it. It's like, if you want to buy a vacuum and go to town on it, you got a right. It's a free country last time I checked.
I wouldn't recommend a Dyson, though, because they got a lot of suction. Very powerful. Like, get a shitty Hoover. Do you know what I mean?
I went to this summer camp. I've never talked about this on the podcast, but I went 2 summers in a row, I think for only about 10 days of summer. It's called Camp Poo Talk, and it's incredible.
Camp Poo Talk?
Poo Talk, PUH''TOK. The stories that I could tell in those 20 days when I was 11, and then the next summer I was 12. I really will
talking about Poo Talk.
Yeah, it's I could have my own podcast. And people, it's in Moncton, which is a kind of a small, older sort of.
Keep getting better.
I know. And the second year I went, I was 11 or 12. I was always a year young because I was born in September, so I was pushed forward instead of held back. So there were kids hitting puberty, and there were the guys that had armpit hair, and then there were still pipsqueaks like me that are like, I'm just happy to hang out. So the second summer, there's this kid named, well, we called him Froggy because his voice was like this. He was like straight out of a Disney movie, and he was one of those people in life that was he was a natural outsider. And he somehow made it worse for himself. You would try to be nice to him, and then you would trip over a tent post and land on the campfire. He choked on a hot dog at a hot dog roast. Like the kid, he literally had to get Heimlicked, and then he was like, "Wow, that was great!" He's just one of those people in life, Froggy. So almost all of the counselors, there was a horse camp was a component. We slept in teepees that we had to put up. And then if you paid extra money, you had horse camp where you would ride horses in the woods and tack them and learn how to saddle them, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know if it's Native American or indigenous persons. I'm going to go with indigenous persons. Most of the camp had, we had some Navajo and we had some, I forget the other tribes, but we basically had Native American, indigenous person camp counselors. And there was one that was really funny, and he was in charge of horse camp, and he was like the cool guy. Like, he never did anything creepy, like give anybody cigarettes or anything like that, but he was just cool, and we really liked him. And Frog used to go to horse camp. And one day I see that cool camp counselor, and he's like white as a ghost, and he's like shaking his head. And I was like, hey, what's up? I'm just a kid, just likes to know an older person. And he's like, are you in teepee encampment? I'm like, yeah, I'm in teepee encampment. He's like, man, I won't say his real name, but he said his real name. But he's like, Froggy, man. I just caught him tickling the horse's penis. And I was like, what? He was like, yeah, I was like working on another horse. I look over, and he like looked over both his shoulders and then just went under and just tickled his penis real quick. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, don't tell anybody. And I was like, well, and I didn't. To my credit, even though being a little guy, I never told it. Well, because I mean, that's like a death wish. If like everybody was already making fun of this kid for just sounding like a frog, and he had fake Timberland boots that were just called Tims with an apostrophe S. Like he just he just was gonna get it. But I've never. But the camp counselor was like shook, like so shook. Like I felt like he needed a whiskey and a cigarette to get over this thing. I guarantee he never came back for another summer. So
Froggy's a future John.
Yeah.
We did it again.
We did it again.
Thank you guys for listening. That's Scotty.
That's Curdy B.
Bananas.
Bananas. This has been an Exactly Right production.
Produced and engineered by Katie Levine.
Theme music by Kahan.
And all of our artwork is done by Travis Millard.
You can follow us on Instagram at The Bananas Podcast, where we post stories every day and things that we don't cover on the podcast.
Listen, subscribe, and please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcast.
And if you're interested in advertising on Bananas, please email us at thebananaspodcast@gmail.com. That's thebananaspodcast@gmail.com.